Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Scrappy Handbag series. We are going to do technically 2 more stitches today. Here is where we're at. Part 1, we did the first 4 stitches. So that's what you see in yellow, purple, green, and this super pale pink. If you need part 1, go back to my channel. It gives you an introduction to what the Scrappy Handbag is going to be and goes over those first 4 stitches for you. Today, we are going to do the light purple, which is going to be a combination of 1 round, excuse me, I have a cold, 1 row of just single crochets just to kind of flatten out from our bobble stitch. Then we're gonna do the linen seed moss stitch, whatever you are familiar with that as. And then we're gonna do a row of the spike stitch, which is that first row of the pink. And then after we finish the spike stitch, we're just gonna do another row of single crochets to finish it off. So that is what we're gonna be going over in this video. So we have our rows coming to shape. Again, I am planning on constructing my bag like this. This will be like a flap that closes over the top, and then the actual bag will be this portion. As always, if you have any questions, be sure to drop them below, but let's get started. So here is the first Scrappy Handbag I finished, showing you in this purpley blue the first stitch, and then the yellow the second stitch we're going to do today. So it's going to be a row of single crochets across the top of the bobbles. Then we're going to do the seed moss linen stitch, and then we're going to do the spike stitch and another row of single crochets. So let's get into it. So pick out the color you'd like to use for the first section, and you're going to tie into the 3rd chain of that initial chain 3 you did for the bobble stitch. So that's what you see me doing there. You're going to pull a loop through. You're going to chain 1, that's going to serve as a single crochet, and then you're going to do a single crochet into the bobble stitch, and then a single crochet into the chain 2 space between bobbles, and that's what you're going to repeat across. So single crochet into the bobble stitch, and then single crochet around the chain 2 space across. So for each bobble stitch, you should get 2 single crochets just to kind of flatten out our bobble stitch and give us a nice surface to work off of for our next stitch, is why we're doing this row of single crochets. Make sure every couple stitches to stretch out your row, and make sure your tension's not too tight so your project isn't curving. When you get to the end of the row, you'll do 1 more single crochet in that chain 2 space, and then a single crochet into the double crochet that finished your bobble row. And that is our first row of this next section. Again, make sure to stretch your project out to make sure that your tension isn't too tight. And then we're going to turn our project and start the seed and moss stitch. So to start, you're going to do a single crochet in the stitch that your loop is coming out of. So we're not skipping a stitch. Then we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet. And that is what we're going to repeat all the way across the row. So single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch. So I'm just going to speed through this because it is pretty repetitive and pretty simple to do. The important thing here is to keep your tension loose so that you're not tightening your project up too much. I have a tendency to do that when I'm working in stitches like this. So every so often I set my project down, stretch it out, and make sure that I am not having too tight of tension. If so, I frog it and redo it with a looser tension. So that's just your reminder here about that. So repeat across, single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and I'll meet you at the end. So I just finished my chain 1, so I'm skipping a stitch and doing my single crochet, and then I have 1 more spot left at the end of my row, so I'm just going to do 1 more single crochet. It's okay if you don't finish perfectly on the end and end with 2 single crochets in a row. So that's 1 row of the seed, moss, linen stitch, whatever you call it. Again, make sure it's not too tight tension wise. We're going to turn, and we're going to start with our single crochet into the loop stitch that your loop is coming out of. chain 1, and skip a stitch. And you should notice that your single crochet should be going around the chain 1 space from the previous row. And then you'll chain 1 again, and then single crochet around that chain 1 space. So just repeating across, you're doing single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and you're going technically into the chain 1 space from the previous row. You'll repeat this down and back for 2 more rows, so a total of 3 rows for your seed moss linen stitch. Again, you see me here, my project was starting to curve a little bit. My tension was a little bit tight, so that's what you see me doing here, is just stretching it out to make sure that I'm loosening my tension a bit by stretching it, so I don't have to frog the entire thing. But that's just something you need to keep an eye on with this stitch. If you're like me, you might have a tendency to have a tighter tension when you're doing like a seed moss linen stitch, because it's got those chains and skipping stitches. So just make sure your project is laying nice and flat. When you're done with your 3rd row of the seed moss linen stitch, you're just going to cut and then secure your end. So that's what you see me speeding through here, weaving in my end and tying to secure. And that is our first section done. We're going to switch to our second color. I like this color to be something vibrant. It really makes that spike stitch stick out, but you're going to tie into your single crochet spot at the beginning. You're going to insert your hook, pull loop through, chain 1, and do a single crochet into that same space you did a chain 1 from to serve as a single crochet. And then we're going to do our spike stitch. So we're going to skip down into the space that was 2 rows previous where we did our single crochet, and we're going to do a spike stitch into it, which is just a long single crochet. Then we're going to single crochet in the next stitch, and then spike stitch. So spike stitches are just really loose tension single crochets into a deeper part of your project. The important thing here is that you keep your tension nice and loose so that your spike stitch isn't pulling up too high, and we're alternating between regular single crochets and a spike stitch, which is still technically just a single crochet. It's just a long single crochet. So this is what it should look like here. You can spike more or less if you want, but you're going to repeat this across with the spike stitches and the single crochets. I have 2 stitches left after my last spike stitch, so I'm just going to end with 2 single crochets, which is completely fine. It does not have to end perfectly. So that's what you see me doing here. So I finished my spike stitch row, and then just to kind of give that color a little bit more depth, I'm going to turn my project and do a row of single crochets across. So in every stitch from the previous row, you are going to do a single crochet. Pretty simple. Same color. Should have the same exact number of stitches as your previous row. So I'm just going to speed through this here. They're all single crochets all the way across. We're just giving that spike stitch a little bit of depth so it stands out a bit more on your bag. So repeat this all the way down, and then we're just going to cut and secure our end, and we have finished our second section for the day and final section for the day. So I'm just weaving in and securing my end by knotting it, and that is where we are ending today. I really like the spike stitch. It gives it a nice detail to the bag. Again, just showing you how I'm folding my bag. I fold it up, and I'm basically kind of folding it into thirds, just so we can see what the shape is going to look like. And that top flap is going to be the flap that's going to go over top my bag. The more stitches we get done, the more this will come into shape. But here's it next to my finished first bag, which I didn't do the flap on. Let's just do a quick little overview. So you have finished part 2 of your scrappy handbag. Again, today we did the seed moss linen stitch and the spike stitch. Super fun. I like using bright colors for these just because it really makes that spike stand out. I will post the next video next week, and we will go over the next 2 to 3 stitches. Again, as always, if you have any questions, please drop below. Tag me in your progress on social medias, and I can't wait to see what everybody's handbags look like.